Hello there, this is Luke from MTG Degree, and today we're going to do the Advanced Altered Art tutorial, which simply means that we're going to alter the entire card. Today we're going to alter Thoughtseize, and I think that the first thing that you should always do in altering is to simply look at the original art. Try to find it in high res if you can. Now, before we get too serious, the one thing that I'd like to point out is I love how in this art, the guy looks exactly like a Magic player who's being Thoughtseized. The first two things that pop out to me in this painting is that on the left, it is very swirly in that misty area. And the second one is if we look at this guy's arms. Now, if we look at the closer arm versus the arm further away from us, that length of arm between the elbow and the shoulder is much longer on the arm behind. It's actually kind of strange proportions. Since we're the ones altering the card, I can try to attempt to fix that in the final version. Now, Wizards doesn't just leave these pieces of art alone before they go to print, so it's always good to look at the actual card that you'll be altering as well and do a comparison. So I noticed that in the one that goes to print, that it looks like contrast has been raised a little bit, and they've smoothed out that like kind of rough fogginess on the left and made it a little bit less like brush strokey. Additionally, they actually cropped from the bottom of the image a tiny bit in order to lessen the effect of that very long arm in the back. It also looks as though the slight darkening and contrast change makes the table in the image a little bit harder to see, so I am going to go and repaint that table. So the first step is obviously that we're going to block out the whole card with gray. Now, this is the easiest step physically, but it is the hardest mentally. I mean, when you do that, you see all that open space that you have to fill. That's why I always suggest, for the first time doing this with some cheap cards, I really like altering basic lands, and that's where I started. Now, remember that even though this is the most difficult thing in card altering, to have all that space, it is also the fastest way to get better because it asks the most of you. So doing this kind of alter is a really great idea if you want to get better. The next step in these full card alters is to take a pen, or at least I like to use a pen, you can really use anything, and draw out what you want to be in that bottom section so you have some frame of reference when you're painting. Now, when you do this, I really think that something important is to add something that wasn't in the image before. So for example, if you're altering mountains, just adding some more mountains is not really that interesting. If you add like a river with a waterfall coming down in the mountains, you're adding a new visual element, then that makes the card a lot more interesting and a lot more worth your time to do. Since this guy looks like someone that's maybe like in the Roman Senate or something, I'm going to have him at his desk here working on some papers. Always remember when it comes to these guidelines that when you actually use the paint, that is what really matters, and what you think looks good at that point is what's important. So remember that these are just things that you put there to remind yourself what you were going to put and how it should be blocked out. But if you want to change on the fly once you're painting, you know it's your painting. Alright, well it's time to finally start throwing down the paint that matters. And when you do this, I always like starting from the thing furthest back in the painting, the thing that's most in the background. So in this case, it's the things that you see outside of the window, so that's where I start. Now, something that you'll see me doing all the time when I'm painting is painting an area, then going somewhere else, and then coming back to that area. Something that's really hard to do with painting is taking one spot and then just doing it perfectly in one go. Instead, you can try painting something somewhere, and then if you think, oh, that looks a little off or something, then continue painting somewhere else, get some progress done, and think about that area, think about how you can do it better. And then, once you're done with whatever you're doing, then you can come back and finish that area. So you'll see me do that all the time when I'm painting. I'll paint a little bit over here, and then I'll say, oh, I think I know what I wanted to do over there, and then do that thing. So there's kind of a constant improvement of the image by jumping back and forth. there's something for new painters called paint by numbers, which is basically like having a whole grid out and then you just work on each section working down with the colors that they tell you to. And that's really not how it is here. You should feel free to jump around as much as you want. Just remember to keep in mind a little bit, I like the rule of working back to front because it's much easier to add new things to the front than to go and add new things that kind of want to go behind where you've already painted. Now you get to see me do exactly what I was talking about before, about coming back to an area that you didn't like. So I didn't like what I had done with this window. I thought that it didn't look quite like the window next to it. And as I painted the areas around it, I decided that the color in there was a little bit mysterious, but it looked a little bit like gray, a little bit like yellow, a little bit like brown. They're all different ratios of those colors in there. So then I went back and I mixed those colors until I got the proportions that I liked, and then finished filling out that window. This recording cutout is a little bit unfortunate because it's the part where I color in these tables with their base color of dark brown, but basically I just went in and put in some dark brown with a little bit of texture going on there, and I chose for it to be pretty dark because the whole bottom of the image seems to be where the deep shadow really starts in the original art. Now you can see me on these tables. I'm taking my brush and just adding in really dark lines where all of the planks of wood are coming together to kind of show how the table is built, and adding a little bit of grain. Now, you can't see it that great in the video because cameras and video codecs have a hard time with those dark colors, whereas your eyes have fantastic dynamic range. However, it is something that shows up quite clearly on the card, so it's definitely still worth your time. Now I'm going to quickly talk about something which I'm sure many of you have thought of, which is that when I do these altars, they're typically also giveaways. If you've been around for a while, you know that those two things go hand in hand. However, this is not the case this time. Had a really sad thing happen, which was the winner for the Expedition Windswept Heath. In the holiday mail, it seems like that got lost, which is super saddening. So I asked him what he wanted, if I could make it up to him, and we came up with the idea of him getting my next altar, something like really good and modern, good eternal format card. So this is going to Joshua Kim to make up for that Expedition Windswept Heath, and if he wants to get some crazy value out of it, I know that I have some big fans to whom it might be worth the same amount. Now here on the table, we're doing a scroll of paper, and I have a little bit of experience of this due to my awesome logo, right? And so basically I thought that it might be a funny idea, since this is going to a fan, that we make this actually my logo. Yeah, so now you all get to see what could hypothetically be inside, written inside of that piece of paper, that scroll, that MTG degree. Alright, well now we're at a part in the image where a lot of it is done, and at this stage I like to go back and work again on all those little things that might have been looking to me like they need a little bit more work. So you can see me jumping around the frame, doing lots of little things to make some sections look better, and that is a process that continues to go on fully throughout the entire painting. However, once you get close to the end, then you get to see everything in context, and it's a really good time to always look back and say, did I do this part good? Did I do that part well? You know, because you don't do things good, you do them well. Yeah, English lessons and everything. So this next part is very important. I start working on the robe here, and you can tell that I'm having a little bit of struggles. I don't know exactly what I want to do with it. And at this point, I realize I haven't really done that much work learning about like complex folding and how I should be illustrating that. And so this is something that I say, okay, that's something that I need to learn in the future for when I want to do something like this. So at this point, I can stop and say to myself, okay, well, I'm going to go learn all that and then come back and do this, or finish it now. And I choose to just finish what I started because I really have to have some sense of completion, and I don't like having alters just sitting there. It kind of like wears on my brain. But knowing how you want to improve in the future is a great way to get better. You can have a list of things that you want to get better at.